What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined always by my main man, Steven Thompson. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talker. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, man, what a week. Just when you think things are getting boring, drama just comes out of nowhere. Always. The hottest topic of conversation remains Diontae Johnson. Mike Tomlin addresses the situation. Some new mock drafts have the Pittsburgh Steelers making some surprising moves when it comes to this incident. And there's a lot of people that have a lot of opinions on how the Pittsburgh Steelers should handle the Diontae Johnson situation moving forward. Meanwhile, the Pittsburgh Steelers get some really good defensive injury news. 2 starters likely returning to action this week against the Arizona Cardinals. It is a beautiful day out in the Burgh. It is freezing cold, though. Not going to lie to you. Took the trash out this morning. Almost lost a toe because I forgot to put Crocs on, but it is what it is. How we feeling, my friend?
Yeah, I'm freezing. Like all week is just, I have a little space heater I keep in my room. I got to keep it right next to me to keep me warmed up. You know, this is winter's finally here, man. This is like we went straight from right after Thanksgiving. They're like, all right, you're gonna freeze your ass off for the next 3 months. You got to deal with it.
That is true. That is, I'm with you with the space heater. It sits right next to me. And by the end of the show, honestly, like it starts off. So in the morning, it's like 0 degrees in the office, and I turn it on. And by the end of the show, it gets so hot next to me, and I can't like push it, you know, because it's metal and it's hot. So I'm like just slowly inching down a sweat, and I'm like, all right, we're almost there. But yeah, it is that time of year. The Arizona Cardinals come to town. Donnie Droon comes to town this weekend, and keep texting him, and I'm just like, dude, you're gonna die out here. Like, do you have a winter coat? Are you prepared for the fact that it's like 7 degrees? He keeps saying things. He's like, oh, we'll go to the Strip District and we'll do this. And I'm like, we're going to go outside? You want to go outside in this weather? I don't know how he's going to survive, but it should be helpful for the Pittsburgh Steelers when the Arizona Cardinals come to town this weekend. Let's dive into really the biggest and the only news surrounding the Pittsburgh Steelers this week, and that is Diontae Johnson. Everybody saw on Sunday the social media highlight, the cameras catching him just completely ignoring a fumble, walking away, not making a block. We talked about it on Monday. Bad situation. This comes a week after him and Minkah Fitzpatrick get into a little skirmish in the locker room following the loss to the Cleveland Browns. Again, all around, Diontae Johnson making headlines for the wrong reasons. Mike Tomlin addresses it yesterday, and while he didn't say a whole ton and made it clear that he was going to let Diontae address the situation before he added more color to it, he did say that Diontae does have to answer for what happened with the media and with his teammates. You heard those comments. Did you have any thoughts? To me, it was a bit surprising that Tomlin said that Diontae needed to be accountable for what happened in the game.
Yeah, it's interesting what kind of those like reality TV things that Mike Tomlin does like to kind of dip his toe into. I mean, this was, like you said, I was surprised as well. I thought he was going to kind of keep it under wraps, diminish it, you know, even if they address it in-house. I didn't think he was going to, you know, make a statement like that publicly and kind of call out Diontae a little bit publicly and say that this is something that he's got to address, especially with his teammates. But it makes sense. I mean, it was an effort play in a close game, and this is a team that's, I wouldn't say fighting for their life, but you know, at times this season has had their back against the wall, you know, and if you don't believe that everyone's kind of pushing in the same direction and fighting in that same way, then it's understandable why he would be upset with it and why the rest of his teammates kind of deserve an answer for that. But you know, I didn't at all expect Mike Tomlin to really air this kind of thing publicly. And like you said, he didn't say much, but he said enough, you know, like anyone who's kind of listened to Mike for long enough or for even, you know, not very long, like knows that this is unusual and it takes something pretty extraordinary and pretty special to draw this kind of response out of him.
Yeah, I agree. Like this is, when I said it, I mean, we were talking before the show, I was sitting behind the reporter in the press conference that asked the question, and they have a little GoPro set up, and you like could clearly see my face in the background, just like, oh gosh, what do we like? This isn't going to do anything. This is too early in the press conference. He's going to ignore it, and then it's just going to end awkwardly. No, he straight up acknowledge. And like for people who are like, why wouldn't you ask that question? There's like a strategic way of when you ask questions that you know is going to piss off Mike Tomlin, because you know that that's like almost always the end of the press conference. So you hold those questions till the end. This one was dropped right in the middle. Thought it was going to explode. No. He's real straightforward about the situation. And I thought even the way he, I guess ignored the situation still added color to it. Like he kept saying, I'm not going to add color. I'm not going to comment on it. But he said small things like, you can't let the emotions of the last play affect this play, which just acknowledges like, hey, I saw it. Like I realized this is a bad moment, and it's more of like things will be addressed, but I'm just not going to say anything right now, and I'm going to let Diontae handle that. Because also on a Tuesday, the players haven't gotten there yet this week. Diontae hasn't had an opportunity to sit there and say anything to his teammates or to his coach or whatever. I do expect that Tomlin during film reviews definitely had something to say. And like, I mean, we've heard horror stories from like Kendrick Green has told me some real bad things where he's just sat there and Tomlin has just torn him apart in front of the whole team. Kevin Dotson too. Tomlin doesn't hold back in these meetings. Like when they're going over film, Tomlin does not sit there and like, oh, well, like he'll call you out. And I'm sure that did happen behind closed doors, but just to acknowledge, just like you said, that he does have to address it. That is significant, especially because Diontae did say something after the game, but I kind of felt like it was a whatever comment. Didn't really realize, or in his understanding, he was like, yeah, like, I don't really care. Like it is what it is, who it happens. I think now that 2 days has passed and he's clearly been on social media, he's realized how big of a stir that play actually caused amongst the fan base and amongst the NFL. Big things. There are some theories, I guess, about how the Pittsburgh Steelers should handle the situation moving forward. Andrew Filipponi of 93.7 The Fan, which as soon as I say that name, I know half the YouTube comments are going to be like, why are we talking about this? What he said is definitely a talking point and needs to be discussed on this podcast. And that is that if Diontae doesn't handle the situation well, if he doesn't address it to the team in a manner that Mike Tomlin believes is suitable, you bench him for the Cardinals game. Is that a possibility? Is that even a thought in the Pittsburgh Steelers' heads when it comes to, I mean, you have to acknowledge that they are very much so in the playoff race right now, still in the AFC North hunt. And like, I mean, as crazy as it sounds, they're a game off of first place in the AFC. Like everything is possible for this team right now. Would you even consider benching Diontae Johnson for a whole game and maybe just for like the first series?
First series, yeah, that could be one thing, but at that point, that feels like a symbolic gesture that doesn't actually really do anything. And
yeah,
I don't really think they should, assuming that Diontae, does take the right steps and talks to his teammates about it and takes responsibility for it. Like, I don't think benching him really helps anyone. Like you said, I think it punishes the entire team for something that Diontae did. I still think the Steelers are better with him than they are without him. So I don't really see a whole lot of value in benching him and, hurting the team at this point in the season when, like I said, they have kind of fought tooth and nail to get to even where they are, which is in a really good spot, despite, the way it might feel. So I think benching him is a little bit of, cutting off your nose to spite your face. Like it just hurts everyone. And I don't think it teaches Diontae anything. I don't think it, I don't think it shows to your teammates that, like, I don't know. It feels like more of a symbolic gesture than anything actual real, like a real consequence for anything that Diontae did.
Do you think that Diontae like addresses this and handles this appropriately this week with his teammates?
I mean, he has to. Like, I don't understand. I don't see how you could kind of walk into an offensive meeting and look the rest of your team in the eye, not say anything, and then go back out on game day and have them have any faith in you. Everyone else in that huddle would dive on a loose ball if it was there for them. And if you're not willing to do that, then I don't really know how you could be in a huddle with those guys, how you could trust each other to give your best effort. So I think you're going to notice if if Diontae doesn't. You know, like
Yeah.
it's. I mean, just I can't obviously put myself in their shoes, but I would be furious if I had a teammate who clearly and demonstrably didn't give his best effort, didn't care about it, tried to deflect from it in the post game, and didn't even have kind of the courage to address it with me, someone who had been out there with him, was battling with him, and would have dove on a loose ball and probably has at some point during my career while I'm playing with him. That would I just think Diontae has to, like, there's no way in my mind that he doesn't recognize that this is something that he needs to do. So I kind of expect him to. I just feel like that's how everyone knows that kind of situation should be handled. So I don't know. I guess you never really know, but I feel like there's just no way that you can walk back into a locker room like that and not address something like that.
Yeah, Diontae, I mean, like, the way I look at it is you're exactly right. Think about, even if you just ignore the fumble and could say, like, oh, he didn't see it, he didn't realize, blah, 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 which is, I mean, that's just terrible, and that's because you didn't have any effort on that play to begin with. To just look at it in like the bigger picture of he gave up on a play because he didn't get his way the play before. Just think about every other position. Offensive linemen get toasted on the regular, and the next play they just have to go out there and get punched in the face again and act like nothing happened at all. Jaylen Warren fumbles the football. He's not coming out the next play complaining about it. Guys constantly get bad calls all the time, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and they have to just ignore it and act like nothing happened and came back the next play. Wide receiver is the only position where you could act as if you're throwing a tantrum the play after something bad happened to you or you kind of got screwed. And I'll admit that I thought it was a touchdown, should have been a touchdown, but it doesn't give anybody the exception of, oh, well, I'm giving up on this next play because I'm mad at the refs. Like, that's just, it makes the whole situation worse, and it makes it your fault. Like, it makes that play, that drop, nobody cares anymore. All they care about is the fact that you gave up on the next play. That's the part that I think has to be addressed, is like, look at guys, like, I gotta do better. I have to not let those emotions boil up. I have to keep my head in the game in that moment, because you never know what's going to happen. And that is as clear of an example as it gets of, you have to just move on because you do not know what game-changing play is going to happen on that next play. I agree. I think that he does address it to the teammates. I honestly expect him to address it to the media when we go there this morning and say something. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know if it's going to be apologetic, but he is good with the media when he's not fired up. So I would expect it to be a good, solid answer. When it comes to the benching, I kind of agree. Like, I'm not benching him for the first series. If anything, like, maybe I'm not like calling his name with the starters on Sunday, but there might be a part of me that like just doesn't announce the starters at all and just goes with the defense and just kind of, avoid that situation as a whole. I'm not taking him off the field. Like, that's
right.
Sorry, but you're 7-4. You're looking to, this isn't, who cares? When you win a Super Bowl, nobody's going to come back to week 12 and be like, well, you didn't discipline Diontae Johnson. No, nobody's thinking about that. They're just thinking about, how could we get to a Super Bowl? And Tomlin kind of said that, like, he's like, my direction is getting these guys ready for Sunday. I don't think he's sitting around going, how do I punish this guy and hurt the team at the same time? Oh, let's just bench him. That doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I do think that there's a part, and this kind of leads us to this next talking point, of this situation is kind of adding up to other situations, becoming a bigger issue. Tomlin's addressing that it is an issue right now. Now you got people talking about, I mean, it is all over the Twitterverse of, get rid of Diontae Johnson, should have traded him. I mean, we've been doing this for years, of listening to everybody and their mother talk about, Diontae Johnson's got to get traded. You should have cut him a year ago. Why would you sign him? I mean, the guy's the most polarized figure on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Guys, we have gear, new merchandise from AST to Muth, Bleed Black and Gold, Kenny to George, and plenty of others now at our new website, blackandgoldapparel.com. And the coolest part, 50% of all profits at our store go to UPMC Children's Hospital here in Pittsburgh to make sure that we are giving back. We can't thank you guys enough, and we want to show you guys how thankful and how grateful we are for everything by making sure that we do our part to make the community here in Pittsburgh better. Go check out everything. We tried to make everything new and improved, from our designs to our quality of sweatshirts and t-shirts and everything else. Let us know and check everything out at blackandgoldapparel.com. And as always, thank you guys for everything. The Athletic recently came out with, actually today, I believe this morning, came out with a mock draft. They have the Pittsburgh Steelers replacing Diontae Johnson in the first round, the 23rd pick in the draft, with LSU wideout Brian Thomas Jr., saying, quote, the way things are going with Diontae Johnson, his time in Pittsburgh might be limited. Is that a real possibility here? Is that a real train of thought for maybe the first time? Because I think we could acknowledge times past, years past, whenever this would come up, you kind of ignore it because you're just like, this isn't realistic. They weren't going to trade Diontae Johnson at the trade deadline this year. They weren't going to get rid of him in the offseason, no matter how many times fans just begged for them to do it. The end of this season, things might be different. You know, are we hitting a point where Diontae might be a consideration to be moved on from after the season?
Well, consideration maybe, but I don't think I still don't think it's very realistic, and I don't think it's the best move for them in my mind. I still think that the Steelers are better with Diontae than they are without him, especially if your solution is drafting a rookie. I don't know. I think there are very few rookies out there that could be better than Diontae Johnson right away, and unless you're getting pretty transcendent talent, you are not going to get someone who makes you immediately better and is an immediate upgrade over Diontae. And I don't think it's just, it's interesting when we talk about the way things are going with Diontae Johnson, because there have been incidents like this in the past. And this is kind of the first one I've seen, maybe not the first one, but like the first one I've seen break contain kind of to this level to get outside of Pittsburgh in this way. The Steelers, I feel like, have survived those other incidents. I don't know what's particularly different about this one, So I don't really understand moving on from him just yet. It's funny because I was kind of on that train last year. I just thought when he was dropping touchdown passes, I was like, this is not working. Let's just move on. And come around to the other side on him this year, I thought he's been much better. I understand his numbers still aren't great, but we saw it when Diontae was out. The offense struggled. George Pickens was getting doubled real easily. And I don't think does a rookie, no matter how good they are, does that really change anything? Does that move the needle? I don't really think so, especially with a young quarterback. So I'm not on trade Diontae train just yet.
The rookie thing does, it weighs something, because I agree with you that you can't draft a rookie no matter who it is and be like, all right, well, that's the replacement. We're all good. Same talent level. Everything's totally fine. I agree. You can't, like Diontae, you're not going to find another Diontae Johnson as a rookie unless it's like you're going out to get like Marvin Harrison. But, unfortunately, the Arizona Cardinals are going to do that with second overall pick. Shout out to them this weekend. You're not going to find that luck. And where the Pittsburgh Steelers draft, it's just going to get like lower and lower. Like you're not going to, your talent level decreases with every pick, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to find themselves in the 20s. That's not, maybe higher or maybe lower, but whatever way, is it higher if you go to 30? Lower if you go to 30?
I would consider it lower if you go to 30. Yeah.
Lower. Yeah. So you find yourself lower, talent level is going to drop a little bit more. It's just not the ideal situation. I do think that depending on how the rest of this season goes, you could consider it. Like, I'm not going to rule out the consideration. There's a couple of things here. So for one, Diontae Johnson's contract up until this point, if you got rid of him, just dead capped him, cut him, whatever, which I think is the worst idea you could come up with, you're losing like $20 million in dead money. Next year, it's like $5.8 million, which, again, if you're just cutting this guy, you're an idiot. It doesn't make any sense at all. Like, what is the game plan there? Oh, let's get rid of a guy who once a season takes a playoff and gets into a fight with the guy, but nobody really cares about it except for the fan base once a year. Like, that's not, it's not an incident. And let's be honest, okay? We addressed this before the show. We could address it right now. both times Diontae Johnson got into it with somebody, it worked out in the better for the Pittsburgh Steelers. The first time was Mitch Trubisky, started the Kenny Pickett era, almost got them to the playoffs. Like Diontae Johnson was almost the reason the Pittsburgh Steelers made the postseason in 2022. And then this year, all that happens. Najee says his thing. Art Rooney's seeing it all. He's had enough of this. And 2 days later, it's over. Matt Canada's fired. The Pittsburgh Steelers needed one game to break a 400-yard, 59-game streak. One game. Shout out to Diontae Johnson. So both times this has worked out. I'm not saying it's what you do or it's a positive. I'm just saying in the grand scheme of things, it's not as bad as people are going to blow it up and make it out to be.
Well, yeah, I mean, in both those incidents, I mean, Diontae maybe didn't approach those situations in the best way, but I think he might have hit on something that everyone was feeling, you know? Like,
yes.
And we haven't touched on this yet, but like Pat Pete saying that it was good anger, you know, the last incident. I think that's like the I don't know, it seems like it's a good representation of these two incidents, or a good description of it, because it is, well, maybe the reaction was inappropriate. I don't think the source of his anger was inappropriate at all or off base. You know, it was something that maybe the team needed to hear, and it seemed like they feel that way. I think Pat Pete kind of does speak for the room in that sense. Like, he's old enough and a veteran and has a beat on what the locker room's like enough to know that Diontae wasn't necessarily wrong, even if he went about it the wrong way.
Yeah, and Cam said something along those lines too, of just like, people are passionate about this and they don't like losing, and it comes out as it comes out. And I think all of those things, you could remove all of those things. You know, again, he doesn't go about them the correct manner, but this is a passion-driven league. You have to have a deeper understanding in that, and I just don't think we do. But the outside of the giving up on the fumble play, I don't really have huge problems with the rest of it. The giving up on the fumble play is a bad, like, that's the one. That's the like, that's as bad as it gets. The rest of them, I'm like, whatever. Back to the whole situation. You're kind of looking at Diontae Johnson like, maybe you start to look at other options just if it presents itself. You know what I'm saying? Because a couple of things here. When it goes back to his contract, you're only getting one more year out of Diontae Johnson. You're not going to re-sign him. Like, you're not keeping Diontae Johnson around for another contract, especially when wide receiver contracts are through the roof and you have George Pickens, and according to The Athletic, you're going to end up with another wide receiver. I just don't I don't see how financially that makes sense, because you're going to start finding yourself in situations where George Pickens needs a contract, Pat Freiermuth needs a contract, TJ Watt's going to need another deal, Cam Hayward, if he's sticking around, he's going to need a situation. Like, there are guys, you got half your offensive line is about to have their contracts expire. You're not in the most ideal situation to just go hand money to a wide receiver. You were the last time you signed Diontae Johnson. You're not this time. I don't think that he sticks around longer than next season. So maybe if you're just looking to get a return on a guy that maybe you could replace, that does make sense. I think this is the first time that's a real conversation that people could have in the offseason. I also think, going back to my initial point here, if the rest of the season plays out where George Pickens just like takes off, and these are all super crazy hypotheticals, but if George Pickens like takes off for the rest of the season and just explodes into the superstar wide receiver, and maybe Calvin Austin comes alive a little bit, I mean, maybe that pushes the needle. Maybe you just look at it and go, well, we have a superstar in George. We could try to develop Calvin into something, and then we could get another number two. But I think a lot of that comes to like what you could get for Diontae Johnson, which is a good question. What could you get for Diontae Johnson? Like, what is the capital on a guy who will be 28 years old next season and has 1 year left on his deal?
I don't know, like a second rounder, right?
Second round pick's a great deal for Diontae. Like, are you saying no to that if you get that offer?
Well, no, but I mean, yeah, I mean, I would love a second round. It just feels weird to like for Chase Claypool to have gone for his second rounder.
Yeah,
like that doesn't feel like Diontae should be like on that same level. But
Chase was the worst deal in the last 10 years of the NFL, trade wise. No, I guess that's not even true. Deshaun Watson is up there.
Yeah,
so
I was gonna say
wide receiver wise, it might be up there.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I feel like a second is pretty realistic. I mean, like for as much as we're complaining about him, like he's still good. Like I
Oh,
mean,
very good. Yeah.
the production's down, but like this guy can still play football. And he's still like a can be a security blanket for a quarterback. So I feel like there'd be a lot of teams that would be interested in Diontae Johnson, especially like I don't know, like you're not giving up like a first round pick. It's weird, like feels like way too much, but a second round pick like feels like way too little. But there's
Hmm.
no kind of middle ground there. But I still think you could get a pretty decent return for Diontae Johnson. I don't know. I'm struggling with this one because I feel like you make a lot of sense with with the idea that like his contract's up next year and you're definitely not going to resign him. I agree with you there. So like, I feel like the smart kind of like economical move is you trade him, you get the most out of him before he walks. But like just in my head, like I don't know, I getting rid of him. But if you're going to get rid of him anyway, like if you're not going to resign him, if you're just going to let him walk, then you might as well trade him at that point.
That's what I'm saying. Like it's a weird situation where it does. There are some areas that it makes a lot of sense. There are some that it doesn't. But for the first time, we keep going back to this, but this is the first time where like there's enough where you like have something to stand on when it comes to making that argument. Again, we'll see. As of right now, this is a situation that you're just sitting around going, you're kind of waiting for Diontae to talk. Outside of that, there's nothing. Like the Steelers aren't going to cut him. They're not going to bench him. Nothing. Yeah. This is the beginning of a conversation that I don't think Diontae wanted to put himself in. Unfortunately, he did, and now that conversation has sparked. All right, let's move on. Let's finish up talking about some injuries here. The Pittsburgh Steelers could get 2 starters to their defense back. Minkah Fitzpatrick and Montravius Adams finally have the light on to return. Diontae KZ said after the Bengals game, when talking about the safety rotation and where he's playing, he said, we all know Minkah's coming back this week anyway, so it doesn't even matter. Everybody's like, what? Well, nobody else knew. I don't even think Mike Tomlin knew. I don't think Minkah Fitzpatrick knew that he was coming back this weekend. That being said, they are locker mates. I'm sure that they have plenty of conversations. I'm sure that they know Diontae KZ knows 100 times more than any of us know. That being, with that, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Montravius Adams, both coming back. How big of a boost is this to get Minkah back? And at the same time, you found something in Trenton Thompson, I believe. Is he still part of this defense moving forward? Is he still part of the rotation? Can you use him in 3 safety sets? Or do you just go back to what you know with 2 starters in Minkah and Diontae?
Yeah, well, obviously, I mean, huge. Like Minkah Fitzpatrick is a bona fide superstar in this league. Like,
yes,
he's a great communicator. There's no question that this is going to be a huge lift. And I think in that same vein, it's kind of not a great deal for Trent Thompson. I think you're right. I think they did find a little bit of something with him there, but just who are you taking off the field for Trent Thompson? Like, yeah. It's not easy. Even with Diontae KZ, I feel like the gap there is still pretty big. Sure, they can use him in some 3 safety sets. Like I'm sure that's possible, but ideally you're going to have Minkah Fitzpatrick and Diontae KZ out there. Those are your 2 best safeties. So this doesn't spell good things for Trenton Thompson, but I think you're still better for it. The idea that he got some starting experience, that he got some snaps in there and played really well in those snaps and in a tough environment and everything like that. Is really encouraging. And I mean, like it's injuries happen, you still are going to rotate guys a little bit. So to know that you have someone competent back there who won't allow you to miss a beat is really, really nice and really, really encouraging, especially considering, I mean, we haven't talked about the secondary really at all. It feels like since before the bye week, quite honestly. Like they've really tightened up, and for Thompson to step in there and to allow that unit not to like miss a beat at all was really, really impressive. So good stuff for him. It's just unfortunate that, it's Minkah Fitzpatrick in front of him. That's the guy's spot he was taking. It's not going to be an easy one to take back when Minkah's healthy.
No, definitely not. Yeah, I agree. You'll see a little bit of Trenton Thompson. I think you'll see your fair share of them because, 2 things here. Like, you're not going to want to take Minkah off the field, but he also has missed the last 4 games. So you're not going to want to see him go from 0 to 100. That'll take a couple of weeks to ease back into it. And luckily they have 2 games where they don't really have to stress about the offenses that they're going against in the Arizona Cardinals and the New England Patriots. So you could kind of like look at that as just like a bridge. You're just slowly building it back in so that Minka's ready for the end of the season. And then at the same time, you want Diontae off the field a little bit because he's been playing. I don't know exactly how many snaps he's taken, but I mean, I don't think I've seen him off the field in like 4 weeks. And at some point, that's going to add up. He's a guy who's like 28, 29 years old. So you do want to take him off the field a little bit. I think the best part of this is that like Keanu Neal, good player. I thought he was reliable. I'd like Trenton Thompson better. Like I look at Trent
Really?
Thompson and be like, oh yeah, I think he provides a spark. I think he's got ball skills that Keanu does not have. You're obviously going to hit hiccups. And the fact that this guy doesn't have any film on him certainly helped the last 2 weeks, and his play will go down because of that. But I just think as like a reliable, like you weren't sending Keanu Neal deep and saying, hey, protect, like be center field. You could do that with Trenton Thompson. And I think that will allow the Steelers to kind of utilize him as a replacement, just like you said. Like he's not going to be off the field completely, but it'll be a minimal role. But in that minimal role, I think he could still produce something. When it comes to Montravius Adams, big question, obviously, is Keanu Benton still the starter? Is this Keanu Benton's role now? And do you fit it back in? Like the way that Montravius Adams is still listed as the starter on the depth chart, but do you see this being the rookie's job now, even if he's back?
I don't. I think Montravius will still start. I think he'll still maybe take a majority of the snaps. I mean, Keanu's definitely played too well to keep him glued to the bench, so
yeah,
he's going to rotate in heavily. But I think we're kind of like, this is different from safety, obviously, and very different from another position. But this feels a little bit like the running back rotation, a little bit. Like you've got a little bit of an older veteran who's played well. You don't really necessarily have a reason to bench him other than the fact that this young guy is playing really well behind him. So I think you can use both of them. And I think it's the same thing as the Minka thing too, whereas Mon hasn't played in a while. He's going to have to ease his way back in, and that's going to create tons of opportunities for Keanu. And if Keanu can kind of keep up the same level of play, maybe we have this conversation again further down the road and we talk about it differently. But I think right now you still kind of stick with Mont as the starter, and you give him a chance to lose the job, you give him a chance to, play worse than Keanu, I guess, for lack of a better term. And if Keanu's the better guy, then he'll absolutely rise to the top. That's just kind of natural. But for right now, I think you kind of got to give Mont the start and give him his fair share of reps before demoting him.
Yeah, I agree with the starter thing. I don't think that Keanu takes out, I think it's Montravius's job. Montravius earned that job. He was playing phenomenal before the ankle injury. There was no dip in his game. He was a very strong and solid part to the Steelers defensive line. I could see that split once fully healthy. There's going to be a buildup, like you said, and the same thing with Minka, but once fully healthy, I could see that split almost being 50-50 just because the Steelers have two studs at that position. That's their best. Depth-wise, that is definitely their best position on the defensive line. And I think you utilize both of those guys because Keanu's a stud. He's balling out. And you go back, whenever I come back and I watch these games after I go through or after we get back from the games or whatever, and I turn them back on, Keanu is he's making maybe minimal impact in terms of a stat line, but he is all over the field. His ball recognition is nuts. He could identify whether it's a pass or a screen or a run play so quickly. It's wild. And I think that is something that you just want to build on just because he's the future, obviously. But you have two stars. They're both young stars. You're going to try to utilize them both. I agree. I could see a 50-50 split. I could also see Keanu starting to move a little bit and play, behind Cam Hayward and behind Larry Ogunjobi and kind of fill other gaps in the defensive line just because Montravius is out there. You want your best guys out there. I could see it, but I do agree with you. I don't think Montravius goes to the bench. I think he comes back as a starter, and I think he's earned that starting job, even as much as Keanu's earned that starting job too, but you're not going to pull somebody just to pull them. Not at this point. Not at this point in the season, and not at this point in anybody's career. Keanu's not a second-year guy who needs to be in the starting lineup. He's a rookie who gets a ton of playing time, and he'll continue to get a ton of playing time, even without that starting label. I agree 100%. All right, with that said, we're heading out of here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcast to find all of our work at allsteelers.com, all our pit coverage at insidethepanthers.com. I got a special podcast coming out for you guys tomorrow with the legendary Donnie Droon coming to town, so make sure you guys check that one out. Probably go up about 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. Check that out on our YouTube page, anywhere you get your podcast. Enjoy a cold but beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.